What's going on, everybody? Welcome into The Highlight, a very serious business podcast for only the most serious business people in the world. And today I'm with probably the most serious person that never laughs, never smiles, is never happy, just all anger all the time. No, of course not. LB Trucks is here today. LB is an amazing business coach, and I'm so excited she's here sharing the spotlight, the highlight with us today. LB, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chandler. I love being on here. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to dig in.
Yeah, well, I don't know where we're digging today, but you and I have this crazy, sporadic energy when we get together. And so we could go down a 4-hour rabbit hole and 50 things. So we'll see what comes today. But I'd love to start with just a little bit about who you are and how in the heck did you get into executive coaching for business owners?
Honestly, it was more by accident. I love business and I love developing people. And so went and got a master's in clinical mental health and then was like, gosh, I miss the business world. And so climbed back in and got connected to an organization that does a great job of business coaching. And so spent about 5 years there learning from small business owners. I think I logged like 20,000 plus hours just facilitating groups and learning so much about business through their eyes. It was amazing. I was like just constantly overwhelmed and amazed and inspired by these people that were out there just killing it in the marketplace. So,
So 3 years ago, you decided to do what they're doing and launch your own business. So I got to know, 3 years in, we have this rule here at High Beam. The 5-year mark is the sort of golden line for businesses and $1 million in revenue. So if you hit one of those two, the chances you fail in business go down drastically. Like that's the stats that we see from the SBA. So you're 3 years into the 5-year journey. What's that been like so far?
Oh my word. Let me tell you, every day people are like, hey, how you doing, LB? I'm like, learning and growing. And I used to hear small business owners say that. And I'm like, psh, okay, whatever. Chandler, it's so true. There's so much every day that I'm like, I will be amending that. Oh, I think I want to try that differently. And that's what to me is fun about this is that it's your business, right? Like I'm the small business, like I'm a little speedboat. And if I don't like something, I'm like, turn. And the little speedboat turns. And so, but that is the biggest thing is just, honestly, it's just staying open and learning from my clients and learning like how I can better serve them. And that's probably been the biggest piece is that if I will listen to them, they will tell me what they want. And
I think it's pretty interesting to say you had previous job had almost 20,000 hours of coaching experience. And then now you've been coaching for however many thousands of hours for the last 3 years. And it's good for my soul, I guess, to hear that there's still, for somebody that has so much experience and so many conversations and gets so much information to still be learning and growing on a daily basis. It makes me feel better about where I'm at in my own entrepreneurial journey.
Well, and can I put an asterisk by the learning because I believe everybody should have a coach, right? So I have my own coach and I went to him and I was like, man, I'm exhausted. Like, I don't know that I can read another book. And he was like, don't. And Chandler, I was like, what? Who is this guy? Maybe I shouldn't be working with him. And he's like, LB.
Readers are leaders. Don't you know that?
Oh, no. He switched it. He was like, leaders are learners. And I blew my mind because I was like, oh my gosh, you went from focusing on a specific behavior to a mindset. Learn.
More of an identity versus an activity.
Yes. Like Chandler, it was such a game changer for me because I was like, leaders are readers, and leaders are readers, but look at it bigger. Leaders are learners. And so this amazing amount of guilt fell off of me because he was like, are you learning? I was like, every single day. Like I'm learning what I need to put in my contract because small business owners are brilliant and they'll be like, oh, well, they'll sit in the contract. And I'm like, doggone it, you're right. It's
the loophole.
Not, but it's gonna be.
It is now. Yeah, what is it? You fail forward. That's basically where we're all at. We're just constantly failing forward and we're not getting kicked out. I do love that because, if you're on the YouTube channel right now, you can see all the books behind me. I love to read. It's just it's how I love to learn because
Yeah.
there's something very tactical for me about setting aside time and actually highlighting the book. And then I even have in Evernote, I'll go and like transcribe my notes, and so that I constantly have a digital version of it to be able to get back to. But I
Brilliant.
think if you learn by podcast, or if you learn by going to conferences, or if you learn by just having conversation with people that
Mm,
are
yeah.
in the same space or you, or a place you want to go, I don't think there's not like a there's no special award for learning a certain sort of way, right? But it does feel like you sort of get guilted into, if you're not reading a book a week, are you
No,
even trying?
I know. And I had like gotten so like just very myopic in that and was like, "Oh, I have to be reading. I have to be
Mhm.
reading." And what's so funny is once he said that to me, like I was like, "You know what? Okay, I'm ready to
Mhm.
start reading again." And what does that look like? And he was like, "Wait, you're reading? I thought we had agreed like just
Yeah.
having conversation with people." And I was like, "No, I actually want to." And so
Mhm.
that was a gift
Versus
because
have to.
mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
And so,
No, that's
like,
good.
that
And
was
I've been a big fan lately of going back and rereading books that I think are top 5, top 10 all time for me. Like Atomic
mm,
Habits is a book I've gone back to time and time again. E Myth Revisited,
oh, love email.
Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Like these are books that I'm going back and rereading. Good to
So
Great
good.
by Jim Collins, because I
Yeah.
find that most of the books behind me aren't very good books. There might be like one or two nuggets that I take out of them, but there's some books where you're just getting so much value out of every chapter. And because your life experience has changed in the previous 12 months, all of a sudden the words you're reading have whole new meanings and context and strategies that can come out of them. And it's
Oh my
crazy.
gosh. It's so different. I didn't do it this year because I opted for a different book, but, every January, my goal is to read Good to Great, to
Mm,
really be able to go, "Okay, how have I grown the last year?" Because you're
yeah.
never gonna read the same book twice, right? And
Hmm.
so it's just you're gonna reread it and you're gonna go, "Oh my gosh, I never read this last year." But it's the
Hmm.
same book, right? But you're
Yeah.
different, and that's what I love using it as a measurement tool to go, how have I grown this last year? What am I looking
Hmm.
how am I looking at life from a different perspective? So, yeah.
What's the saying? The teacher will appear when the student is ready. And it's funny because it was the same teacher because it's
Mhm.
the same book, but all of a sudden
Yeah,
it's a different teacher now just because you are at a different headspace and
that
now
place.
you're quote unquote ready. So I got to know, Good to Great is one of my favorite books. What is your favorite takeaway, or like what is the last time you did go through it? What was the thing that stood out to you most?
You know, it's so funny what's coming to mind. I think the thing that stood out to me the most was, rather than chasing what everybody else thinks you should be doing, what is it that
Mm,
it's what is it that you enjoy and how can you make a living in doing that, right? And so
mhm,
that I think that's probably been in my first 3 years of business, like, that has been probably one of the biggest things is people are like, "You should do this and you should do that." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, maybe I should, maybe I should." But I
yeah.
feel like that book is so grounding because it's like, "Hey, what are you great at? What does the market need? And what can you monetize?" Right? And so
Hmm.
I think that was the biggest thing that jumped out at me was like, "Hey, like, you know who you are, you know what you're gifted at, because of that, go look at the market and what's the market asking for, and then go produce something that they're going to want." Um,
Yeah.
and so that was really powerful for me because, and I'm curious for you too. Like, so, what is it? Opinions are like armpits. Everybody has them. Some stink, right? And so
Yeah. That's a
there's so
much nicer version of the Air Force version of that saying that I remember
I don't
from
know the Air
12
Force
years ago.
version. I'm like, what's
I'm
the Air
not.
Force?
This is a G-rated podcast, I think, most times. So we'll keep it clean today.
That's a
You can
family
text me
family.
later. I'll let you know.
Oh, okay, okay. But that's just something that it's amazing how many people are like, "Oh, LB, you should do this. Oh, you should do this. You should do this." And it's like, "Oh." And what I learned to say was, "Thank you. Thank you." And then go, "Okay, like let's look at, what is the intersection of what I'm great at, what the
Mm,
world needs, and what are they willing to pay for?" And
yeah.
so, and it also challenges me because I do love what I do so much that I remember I have bills to pay and I need to pay those bills.
Yeah.
You can't do it for free.
Well,
So
I think that's how you know you're in the right business, though, because you would do it for free.
Mhm.
And you've just created this world where you get to do both of the things at the same
Yeah.
time, where you both get paid as your vocation and it's your hobby slash passion. And I think I'm a big fan of combining those two things. I've talked to a lot of people that have reached out and said, you know, hey, I know you've started a couple businesses. Like, I want to know how to do it. For me, I
Mhm.
break it down into like three circles. So it's proficiency. So like, what are you actually good at? What skills do you actually have, or do you need to go get?
Yeah.
What are you passionate about? Like, what
Mhm.
really is driving curiosity for you, where you could waste 12 hours going down rabbit holes on the weekends about? And then profitability, right? And it's like, how much money do you want to make, and how much
Yeah.
money will the market actually pay you? And then there's different levels.
Mhm.
Like, there's the Amazon level of things, where you're trying to build the biggest company in the world. And then
Mhm.
there's down to like a lifestyle business type thing, where you're just trying to be a single sole operator, and
Yeah.
you're just trying to replace your income from your day job and just live your best creative life, and yada yada. So I think if you can find the intersection of all three of those things, you really set yourself up for success and avoiding burnout, which I think is a major reason that a lot of business owners fail, and probably why they should end up with a coach, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting because I was just having a conversation this morning, and because I do believe like connecting with colleagues is important as well. And so I was having a conversation with a colleague this morning, and he was like, "So basically, what you help do is create mental space for small business owners." And I was like, "Yeah."
Mm,
I was like, I do
it's a good
because
line.
I know he's brilliant.
That
And
needs
so
to be
I
the
was like,
tagline on your website, by the way. The marketer
he's
in me
such
is
a
turning on now. So.
I know, right? And I was like, yeah, because he said, "What's their biggest issue?" And I was like, "They don't have margin." And he's like, "So what's your goal?" And I was like, "My goal is to help people be the healthiest version of themselves, right? Like,
Mm,
if
yeah.
what does that look like?" And I love how you just talked about like, are you trying to create something big like Amazon, or are you trying to create like, is this a lifestyle for you? And so
Mhm.
what I love getting to do is typically work with small business owners at a pretty frenetic place. There's a lot of frenetic
Yeah.
energy, like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. And I'm like, okay, like let's create some mental space there for you. Um because like I know that they're the experts at what they
Mhm.
do. I just need to help them get out of the way.
Yeah, and, and
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 so
I think getting the headspace to be able to like go reconnect with the vision you may have known
yes.
about, or maybe it was just intuition that was driving you in that direction. And then at some point, the day-to-day grind sort of made you forget the reason why you started the thing, what you were trying to drive towards ultimately down the road. I wish you would have known me when I had Lyle's Barbecue Company, the first business, because my mentality was, I'm going to open 1,000 of these. Like, first off, opening 1,000 barbecue restaurants is insane and just not what the barbecue market is. I'm not going to go into the nuances of that thing. But the reason there was like, I was like, everybody I see that's successful on the cover of magazines and whatnot is building the biggest business possible. And it was only after that I had crashed those businesses and had time to reflect, because I had to reflect, that I decided like, oh, had I just opened 3 or 4 locations around the central Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky area, I would have had all the money I wanted. I would have been able to do all the free things I wanted to do, like from a creative standpoint. I would have been able to go to all the Kentucky football and basketball. Like, I would have been able to create the life I truly wanted with just 3 or 4 locations, and had the impact of the community and had employees, and like everything I actually wanted was at that scale,
Yeah.
versus the wrong vision of like, I'm supposed to build the biggest thing possible, so I'm going to go do that. So I do think
Mhm.
getting a coach to help you get out of your own way is a great idea.
It is, yes. And I mean, I will tell you like some of the most um interrupting conversations even for my own business have come from coaches that I have put myself in their path, and I'm like, "Hey, like here, here's where I'm going, here's what I want to do." And their question was, "What makes you want to do that?" I mean, if that's what you
Mm,
want, that's great. And they're like, "Is that what you want?" And I'm like, "No, that's not what I want." And
mm,
that has been such a game changer for me that I'm like, gosh, I want to pay that forward, right? I
mm.
I want to help small business owners be the healthiest version of themselves, but also, Chandler, like I want them out there leading in the community. You just hit on it, right? Like I could have been more involved in the community. I want that. I want small business owners who are out there and understand their community and the families in their community to be out there making decisions for them. And like one of my small business owners, she just got asked to serve on a board, and I was like, I'm so proud of you. And she was like, what? Why are you proud of me? And I was like, one, you're a freaking rock star, but two, you are great at what you do. You've set your business up that it can run without you, right? So many small business owners, they just do everything. That's how they got
Mm-hmm.
to where they are. And if they were to walk away from the business to go serve in the community on a board or something, the business would fail, right? And so she has now gotten her business running without her. And so she can go serve on a board and make incredibly amazing decisions in the community. And
Yep.
that's I mean, it's when you have thriving small businesses in a community, I don't have the data, but I would be real curious, like, are they not the healthier communities, right? What's going
Yeah,
on?
they definitely have to be the communities that are more interesting to live in from a
Yeah.
resident standpoint. Because I know as nice of an area as where I live in Spring Hill, Tennessee, is there's not a lot of local businesses here. There are a few, but definitely not as many as a Columbia, which is just south of us, and a Franklin, which is just north of us, and even a Nashville, which is north of that. Because there is so much local business in those areas that those towns have their own. They have their own like what's the word I'm looking for? Like brand. They have their own feeling. They have their own personalities. And
Yeah.
I think that when you let a lot of large chains run the area that you live in, it just ends up feeling like the stereotypical American town versus like what's unique about us here. Like that was one of the really nice things about Lexington, Kentucky was that it's a very local town. There's a bunch of local restaurants and breweries and local
Yeah.
business owners there that are great. We have the chains there as well, but the
Yeah.
local side of things definitely gave it some flavor. I do have a question. I want to go back just a second. You said something interesting there. The
Yeah.
business owner that has to be there for their business to run versus the business owner that can step away for something as small as 2 hours. Like
Mhm.
what? Talk about that for a minute. Like what keeps business owners from being able to make that transition from the business heavily relies on me to the business can run without me and I just get to do the things I want to do around it.
Yeah. Um, I think the biggest piece, and you and I talked about this when we got together on Saturday, is humility, right?
Mm,
It is, I'm humble enough that I have people in the business that are smarter than me that can do this better. Um,
mm,
it is humility, it's trust, right? Like it's trust that I have the right people in place. SOPs is a real big word right now in the world that I live in. So standard operating procedures, but the SOPs are in place. And so, but I mean, Chandler, I just go back to its humility, right? Like, if I'm the business and the business is me, I'm not going to step away from it because, oh, the business has to have me. But the reality is,
mm.
I have to have the business. And so for me, like, that's one of the things in coaching that I work on is, hey, like, who are you?
Yeah.
What are you
I think
doing? And
no, yeah, I think one of the shifts I had early on at the barbecue restaurant was I instead of the humility, and I think for me it was ego. Maybe that's the same or two
Mhm.
sides of the same coin, right? But
Yeah,
for me, I had a lot of pride and value in I made this sandwich or I made this barbecue, and the 5-star review that came in or the positive praise in the dining room that came in made me feel good.
yeah,
And I felt like I had to be the one to go do that. LB, I have this story. When we first opened, we had a tent on the side of the road, right? Like we were a nothing, very small brand. And I was partnered with my parents. And I may have told the story on the podcast before, but it's good color. It still drives me crazy that I did this. I basically insisted that I worked the cashier, the register every day, and that every single customer had to talk to me. They weren't allowed to talk to anybody else, including my parents slash business partners, because I was afraid they would say or do something wrong and end up with a bad review on Yelp. So, like, if somebody like me that starts at that low of a level from I have to be in control of everything can get to where I'm at now, which is like, I'm very much more happy when somebody else delivers a result for the business and we win and then we get to celebrate their success because I like the kinetic chain that ends up back at me as the leader of the company saying, hey, we won, but you are the one that delivered this actual result today. And that's where I get my value now as a
yeah,
owner slash leader. It's not so much in what I did. I care very little about what I do now, but it's interesting. I think that maybe, is that a self-esteem thing, you think? I mean, I know you've got a little bit of a background in that from your college days, but is it a
Yeah.
mental, like we have a low self-esteem and we need the value there, or?
I think it's identity, right? It's not it's because you're so good at what you do, you've attached your value to that, right?
Mhm.
And so it is saying, well, I mean, only I can make this sandwich. Like this is only I can do this, right? And
Mhm.
so it is pride, right? And so I think in that, like, it's being humble enough to go, you know what, like, I want to help someone else achieve this. I want someone else to be able to make a sandwich even better than I can make a sandwich, right?
Mhm.
And so I do think that's why, I mean, you've heard me say, like, the only way that coaching works is if, and I'll use Patrick Lencioni, if you're humble, hungry, smart.
Mhm.
Because if you think you're the smartest one in the room, everybody knows it, right?
Mhm.
And that is the space where, like, I've worked for leaders that are the smartest ones in the room, and I'm not still there. And I texted a guy that last night, I texted him. He was a leader of mine, and I texted him and I was like, I'm so thankful for you. And he's like, God, LB, quit texting me that you're thankful for me. Like, you were a rock star before I was your leader. Um, and I was like, yes, but you were one of the first leaders that, rather than taking credit for my work, you let me take credit for my work.
Mhm.
And you
Yeah.
told me to take credit for my work. And so to me, like, it's just a slight difference.
Mhm.
But like, I was working to make my leader look great, and my leader was working to make me look great.
Yeah,
And I
that's a
think that's,
fun, positive relationship there.
my
It's
God.
tough to beat because you can't, the momentum from that, like, I'm just trying to outgive you and you're trying to
Yes.
outgive me. That's
Yes.
a very healthy place to be, and you can do some damage in the world, positive damage, I guess.
Positive damage. Yes.
Positive damage. That's right.
Mhm.
Impact is probably a better,
Yeah.
what's the word? Whatever word. But so the next question has to be, like, if you come across a business owner in your coaching and then they're sort of exhibiting those symptoms, like, what's your advice to them, or what is the questions you're asking? Like, what tactics can we give them here on the podcast that maybe outside of coming to work with you as a coach, like, that they
Oh
can
my
go
gosh.
work on today and improve there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is, like, when I start with people, the first thing I work on is accountability, which I'm looking at, how much are you working in the business versus on? You mentioned E-Myth, and reading that. It's one of my
Mhm.
favorite books. So I'd be like, freaking go read E-Myth. And if you're like, oh, I've already read it, reread it.
You
Right.
missed you missed a chapter.
Yeah, yeah. Are you the technician? Are you the entrepreneur? Are you the manager? I just did it in wrong order. But it's become a student of yourself, right? You've
Mhm.
got to raise that awareness, right? Like, ask your team members, like, hey, how am I coming across? And I'm gonna tell you, that is hard and that's humbling, right? Like, as
Mhm.
business owners, you and I should be asking our clients, and I'm saying should because I'm like, ooh, I need to be working on this.
You get
Hey,
some
how
homework coming out of here.
I know, right? Like, how's coaching going for you? What's working? What's not working? But I think the more aware we can be, the the less the more successful we'll be, because we know how we're coming across. We know
Mhm.
what we need versus what we don't need. This is why I love assessments. Like, I love the Working Genius. I love DISC. I love Myers-Briggs, like anything like that that's going to help you go, oh, like, I'm not great with detail. I need to work with someone who is great with detail. Like, that's
Mhm.
that's what I want. Is I just want to see an increased awareness of, wow, when I get stressful, this is how I come in and treat my team, right?
Mhm.
Or, like, when I'm not stressed, like, I'm really fun and my team enjoys me. What I want to see from a leader is more consistency, right? And that's the weight of leadership, is if I'm having a really crappy day, it doesn't need to go out on my team, right? And
Mhm.
if I'm having a really great day, like, I want every day to be a great day, not because I'm pretending or hiding, but because I'm here to serve these people and help them be the best version of themselves, right?
Yeah. There was a leader that I had when I was in the Air Force. Lieutenant Butler was his name at the time, and he was a former enlisted guy, and he transitioned over to the officer side of things. But he was the most straight edge, by the book, hold the standard of the military guy, leader that I had ever come across in my short time in the Air Force. And I think at first it sort of was aggravating a little bit as somebody that reported to him, where I was like, come on, man, like, is this like, there's no slack in your system? Like, is this really that big of a deal? And I think that the fact that he held himself to that standard every day, more so than what he expected out of us, fitness wise, cleanliness wise, his uniform was always top notch. His hair was never out of place, never even a hint of 5 o'clock shadow. Like, there's like military terms here that some people in the audience would be like, yeah, I know those people, or I remember those pain points. But the point is that I think what you said there is so right, that you have to be, whatever leader you're going to be, you have to be consistent. And I think bad leaders have bad habits that they're very consistent with, and then they would probably want to get out of it, but they don't know how, or they don't have the tools to do it. And so I love the self-awareness piece there that you're suggesting people dig into. So is there a specific way? Is it the personality test, or is it working with somebody that help you unpack that stuff? Do you think somebody can do it on their own, or do they really need to get involved with someone?
I think they need to get involved with someone. And I will say that just because, like, my experience has been, the most significant change I've seen in my own life is when I've had a coach, a counselor, like a mentor, right? I'm not saying you have to pay someone, but I am saying, like, when you have someone that is, I use the phrase, is willing to love you to life, not death, right? If I'm going to love you to death, then I'm really loving myself more. And I'm like, oh, you're great. You're great. But if I love you to life, then I'm willing to say, hey, when you just made that comment, that came across harsh. Like, I don't really believe that's how you meant it to come across, but like, that came across really harsh. And so, I believe good first step is like, if you don't have the budget for a coach or a counselor, go find a mentor. But I think taking these assessments, and I mean, I love the Working Genius. That's probably my favorite one right now, even though it's more about productivity than personality. But just like, what are my tendencies? Where do I lean? Right. Like, and just raising that awareness piece. And then I think taking the step, it is humbling to go to someone and say, hey, I'd love for you to mentor me. It's humbling and it's scary, because the answer could be, no, I don't have time to do that. Right. My hope is that's not what's going to be said. I do believe that change happens in relationship. You look at the people that are the best at what they do, right? Like, look at athletes. I love athletes. Like, I'm not an athlete and I love them. They amaze me. They have a coach, right? The coach is not on the court. Look, basketball is the big one right now for me. The coach is not on the court, but is on the sidelines cheering them on and going, hey, watch out. Like that, like, that's how I see the role that I'm doing, is like, hey, I get to be on the sidelines and go, oh my gosh, you're doing a great job. Or, hey, time out. Come here. Like, come here. I mean, yesterday I was working with a client, and she's phenomenal, brilliant, does such life-changing work for individuals, and struggling through a conversation. And I said, your role as the leader is not to make your people happy. It's to make them successful at the work they're doing. And Chandler, she was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, yeah, if you see your job to make your people happy, you will be miserable. And that is not possible. I can't keep myself happy. I can't keep.
You know what I'm thinking about in that, though, is that if you ask her on her, maybe not best day, but if you just ask her about somebody, like, she probably knows the answer too, which is wild. Like, it's like something she knows, but there's something about having somebody else either point it back out or remind you of the thing that you already know, and then hold you accountable to it, that'll actually make you go change and do it, right?
Yeah. And that's the piece of, like, that's what I love. Like, I do coaching during work hours, and I love that because I get to interrupt their day, right? I get to come in via Zoom and I get to interrupt their day. And I love that because my hope is that they leave the coaching call and they are looking at life from a little bit different perspective. Not much. I'm not asking them to jump to the other side of the table and see their world from that perspective. But I'm like, can you just take your chair and just scooch it over an inch and now look at it? Now look at this situation. And, that's what I love. I love seeing people just being humble enough to go, "Ooh, maybe I should look at this from a different angle."
Mm,
Yeah. Like, let me
yeah.
let me just shift, because I'll tell you that's when my world began to change, right? Like, I was working for an organization that was doing coaching, so my leader began to coach me, and I was like, "Man, if I'd had you 5, 10 years ago, I would have handled things way differently." Um,
Yeah.
and so that's the piece that I'm like, get someone, mentor, um, friend. I would go mentor a little bit more, right? I have a mentor, I have
Yeah.
a therapist, I have a coach, like, because I it takes a village.
Yeah.
And if I'm asking my
So
people to do that, I've got to do it.
yeah, I do want to remind that you said initially, like, get somebody that's willing to love you to life. I really like that because
Mhm.
loving you to death, I love that. Is selfish. It is about, like, I'm just trying to maintain the relationship so I don't have to deal with any awkwardness, and
Yeah.
I can, if you died tomorrow, like, I know I could have said something that maybe set you on a different path, but like, at least I loved you all the way through to death versus like, I loved you enough to want you to I want your business in this specific scenario to
Yes.
live on for the next decade, 2 decades,
Yes.
until you want to be exiting from a sale or retirement or whatever. I do really like that. So from a mentality standpoint, though, of the person that's approaching a coach or a mentor in this situation, like, what what do they need to bring to the table internally? Like, what position do they need to come into those first meetings with to get the most out of those relationships? Because as you and I know, if you get a mentor, what I've seen, while you gather the answer here, I've got an anecdote. There's that we've seen it time and time again. Somebody will reach out to me for like advertising advice.
Yeah.
And then we'll have like an hour long thing together, like coffee or whatever. And then they spend the entire 55 minutes talking about whatever they had on their mind. And they never asked me questions or asked, I don't know what that's about. Like, it feels like they're trying to get validity for their own ideas that they already have, and they just want to sign off on it. And so I just sign off on it. And I'm like, sounds like you know what you're doing, rock and roll.
Yeah.
And but they didn't really get as much value out of that specific exchange as they could have.
Mhm.
So I'd love to know, like, even for myself, like, as I'm approaching coaches and mentors in my life, like, what do I need to be aware of to get the most out of those relationships?
Man, I'm thinking through like the different relationships that I have with a mentor. Um, when my mentor and I will go sit out on her back patio. She's a retired accountant, and we'll go sit out on her back patio, and I try to ask good questions and shut up.
Hmm.
I mean, that's because I am there to learn from her. If she was on here, she'd be like, "That's not true." Like, and that's the beauty of a mentor relationship, right? I think Simon
Yeah.
Sinek said it. Like, um, a mentor relationship goes both ways, and so they are learning from you as much as you are learning from them, and it just kind of happens. And so um, I try to go into the situation with her name's Becky. I try to go into the situation with Becky and ask questions and listen. I'm not there to prove myself. I am there to learn
Mm-hmm.
from her. Um, I think probably that would be the biggest thing across the board, Chandler, is like, if you feel like you have to go in to prove yourself, that is not the right mentor. It is not the right coach. It is not, because you're going to spend the whole time trying to prove rather than being humble and going, what can I learn
Yeah.
from them? How can I learn from
It
them?
sounds a lot like a self-esteem issue again. I'm starting to see a theme here that if you are, and maybe you need coaching to help you understand that you have a self-esteem problem, because I do think a lot of us struggle with that, especially on our worst days, even if you've maybe have dealt with that
Gosh,
already. But on your bad days, you've definitely got low self-esteem. But
yeah,
if you are seeing yourself like, hey, I feel like I've got to be the smart guy in the room today or the smart girl in the room today, all of a sudden you go, hey, I've got a self-esteem problem today.
right.
I need to take a step back and reset.
Well, and then, I mean, I don't know about you, but like one of the things I talk about with coaching is like I want to be client centric. Well, if I have to prove myself, I've already blown that, because
Mm,
it's LB centric, right? It's if I'm
yeah.
going in to prove myself, it's all about me. And I don't, that's not what I want, right? I mean, I've
Mhm.
gone into, I mean, just to give you a simple example, go to a workout class, go to a class of any kind, and you will automatically watch the instructor. Is the instructor, like, how are they interacting with you? What are they saying? I went to one workout class, and the lady was like, oh my gosh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. I was like, I'm never coming back. I don't care what she is. I just want to like help me be a better version, a
Yeah.
healthier version of myself.
Mm.
And so, I think in that, like, when you are going to approach these relationships, if you feel like you have to prove yourself, you're
Hmm.
already going to lose.
Yeah.
And
I think if
so,
you have if you have somebody in your life like a coach and you have that space on a weekly basis for an hour, I get to go be selfish with somebody and I get to go approach a coach and say, hey, here's my problems. And that coach is paid to be there, not as a friend or a mentor, even like you are paying for that
yes,
time. And
yes.
then you're able to be selfish for your self-esteem or whatever in that hour. I would imagine on the back end of that, the downstream effect would be you're able to pour more into the people around you that you're leading because you've already got somebody there taking care of you. Your needs are met. So now you get to go apply that to everybody else in the organization.
It's so true. One of my favorite books that I call her friend tour. She's a friend and a mentor, so I call her friend tour. Gave me like probably 10 plus years ago is the book Humility by Thomas Murray. Um,
Okay.
it looks
Got
like
to
a
add that one to the
pamphlet.
list.
Yeah, it's like super simple. It is a gut punch, Chandler. I mean, it is because the whole book is it will deal with like, if you want like a non-Christian book like I think Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy, such a good book, right? And so
Mhm.
those are two really good books that it's like, oh, this isn't about me, right? And it goes to how do I steward well what I've been entrusted with, right? And if
Mm.
it's about me, I don't want to talk about stewardship. I don't want to because that what that is saying is I have been given gifts and talents and how do I want to steward them well as opposed to man, I got to get out there and build a platform and I've got to make this the best version for me. It just
Yeah.
it's the perspective shift, right? How do you want to live life, right? Like is it building you up and building pumping that ego up, or is it going, man, I've got everything I need. How do I want to steward these gifts and talents well so that other people can win in life? Other people can get ahead, right?
Yeah.
I had a good
So how
mentor.
about what about the well, I do have a question though. So
Yeah.
there is an element to everybody's business that I think the person that owns that business considers it art. And what I mean by art is like it is sort of about you and your expression towards a thing and then you're not really making it for other people. You're doing it for you in a way. And you hope people like it and that would be a great downstream thing, but there is some like level of selfishness there where like I've got to create this thing to do that. For me, my example would be I love to write. So we have a weekly email we send out for the High Beam marketing newsletter, and I love to write on that thing. And I try to make it, we want it to be valuable for everybody else, but also at the same time, I don't care if anybody reads it because it's really for me in my own expression. Is that healthy or do I need to work on that? I'm getting free coaching at this point. That is my when it comes to art inside my business. Am I doing it the wrong way? Am I in
Doing it
trouble
the
here?
wrong way. No. I mean, I would shift the perspective a little bit, right? And
Hmm.
I would say that you've been given a gift and talent, right? Like, I would say like from our both of our faith backgrounds, like what I would say is God has given you a gift and talent of words and a gift and talent in marketing that nobody else has, right? And so in writing, you are sharing that gift with the world, right?
Hmm.
And so you can either see it as like, oh, look at how great I am, look at how wise I am, or you can say, man, God has allowed all of these things in my life and thank goodness he's like now I can say thank goodness he's allowed some of these things in my life because now you can go and share that wisdom with the world, right? And so
Hmm.
to me that's you stewarding what you have learned and the gift of words and sharing it with the world, right? Like I love art. I'm so thankful that like Monet, like all of these artists, and those are just a few, like that they shared their gift with the world. They could have kept it to themselves, but
Hmm.
they had a gift of capturing light, right? That's I mean, I love photography and when somebody's like, "Oh, I love photography." I'm like, "Yes, you have a gift of capturing light." And so they're taking that gift that they've been given and they're stewarding it so that the rest of the world can see it. And so that's how I would see like you can either use it to feed your ego and be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm such a great writer. Who nobody else can do this like I can." Or you
Yeah.
can say, "Man, my path is unique, and it's the one that God has given me, and I want to steward this to help businesses win in the marketplace, right? And so
Mm,
I think it's just a perspective shift of, are you doing it wrong? No, I would say just shift that perspective a little bit more to go, how do how do I take these gifts and these experiences, and I can either hoard them and they're mine, or I can go, gosh, I'm going to put these out there in the world, not because I want everyone to see what a great writer I am, but I want people to win and do better than what I've done, right? Like, that's something a former leader used to say all the time, like, I'm great at what I do because I was so dumb. Don't be dumb like
mm,
me. And
yeah.
that's what I
Learn
would
from my
say is
mistakes,
just,
right?
yeah, just shift a little bit and go, hey, like, I'm putting this out there in the world because I can't keep it inside, right?
Mm,
And but I think where I have learned is I can't get my value from, I'm valuable regardless if I have 30,000 followers or 3, right? I think that's the temptation in the marketplace is like, oh, I'm only valuable if I have 30,000 followers. I'm like, no, you're valuable regardless. Don't give that
mm.
power away, right? Now, do we want others to see what you're doing and find it and become that much better? Absolutely. But don't let your value and worth ride on the number of followers you have. And it's a
Yeah, I
struggle.
the number of people that consume anything or come to your business or anything like that. I mean, there is a level of you have to sell a certain amount to stay in business for sure.
Yes. Yes.
And I think we can all hit that level pretty quickly, like at least much quicker than you think you can. And where a lot of people get into trouble is that they start doing the comparison game, or they say, hey, my business isn't as big as so and so, or I'm not doing
I
as well in
know.
so and so on LinkedIn. Like, I have a
No,
love-hate relationship with LinkedIn in general and social media, but
no.
like it's very easy to fall into that comparison trap. And what I have found to be helpful for me on my journey is that I have tried to remind myself that it is the process of doing the thing that matters more than anything else, and that if you just continue to get better at doing the thing, yeah, Simon Sinek is definitely a guy that I love to read for sure, just like you.
Yeah.
And Infinite
Yeah.
Game, the book he wrote recently, is one of my favorite books and really changed my mentality on all things business, because it is truly a infinite game. Business
Yeah.
doesn't stop just because you go out of business. And I know because I went out of business once and the game kept
Yes.
going. People kept going to restaurants, they kept going to barbecue restaurants,
Yeah.
and we weren't there and it was fine. Like nobody
Yeah.
cared. And so my mentality around that specific time period of my life was wrong, in that I was worried about the outward impact that we were having versus like continually focusing on the craft every day, getting better every day, being better than I was yesterday. And if the back to the writing example, if the email we put out this week or the podcast we put out this week is better than it was last week in small little minute ways, that
Mhm.
brings me all the joy in the world now, because I don't know. I don't. I had a video on Instagram get 150,000 views the other day, which is great and grand and amazing. And then I had a video get 300 views, which is also great and grand and amazing, because I would love to speak in front of a room of 300 people, right? But it
Yeah.
was both of those videos I really enjoyed making, because we're
Mhm.
working on the craft and we're working on our business and
Yes.
we're trying to get better today
Yeah.
versus yesterday. And so it is a subtle
It is.
mindset shift. You were right.
Yeah. And hear me loud and clear. Like, numbers are not bad. Like, I want people looking at their numbers and going, okay, like, which lever do I need to pull? Cause um, but I think where I want to be sure we're not doing is attaching our worth to those numbers. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the space where I get real protective of my small business owners is I'm like, hey, like, are your numbers what they should be? No. And are we disappointed? Yes. So what has to happen in order for those numbers to get back up? And so what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say is, like, your value and worth is not attached to those numbers. You are still a living soul and you are bringing value and worth to this world. Somehow it's the who moved my cheese. The cheese moved and we didn't move fast enough with it. Right. And so I want numbers to be insight into what's going on in the business. I don't want numbers to be defining what I am worth as a person. And I think
Mm.
that's where I've learned that so much in my life is like I was attaching value and worth to what I did rather than who I am.
Yeah.
So,
It's a good word. Data should inform our decisions and inform where we are in business, but they don't drive our business decisions, and they don't drive what value we are bringing or will bring to the market, because sometimes you're just new and early and they haven't caught up yet. There's a whole other scientific thing we can get into with the law of diffusion, but we might have to say that for episode 2.
I know,
LB,
right?
that was as good of a note to end on as any. I've really loved this conversation. We definitely got to have you back again. How can the people out there connect with you, and what can we do for you in the future?
Oh my gosh, Chandler, you're amazing. I love getting to have conversations like this. Uh, lbtruckscoaching.com is the website. And so just go there. There's information that you can hear. I think my biggest thing is I want people to hear what small business owners are saying through doing coaching. And so regardless if it's me or not, go to the website and listen to what the small business owners are saying about what is working for them and how they are seeing their teams win, because they are investing in themselves. And so if it's me or if it's somebody else, just I would tell you, go find a coach, go find a group of like-minded individuals. But yeah, it's huge. So but yeah, check out lbtruckscoaching.com. Thank you, Chandler.
Yeah, this was great. I can't wait to see the new title on the site that says, what was it? Mental space. We create mental space for business owners. That's the line right there. I think we got a $1 billion idea on our hands. We're building the next Amazon over here, watching LB do it. So LB, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate everybody out there that's listening and watching. If you need anything else, let us know. We'll see you next week. Peace.